Welcome to the Cassini shawl pattern. This is Laura, and I look forward to sharing this tutorial with you. Let's start with a quick review of the pattern. There are a couple new techniques, and they are explained on the second page. On the third page is a review of the showy decrease. In the classes I teach personally, we always start with this swatch, and that's because this is a pattern that requires you to recognize this raised line in your knit fabric. When I teach the pattern, after the first half of this swatch, I make the students turn it over and knit from visual references. All of the pattern overview notes are on one page, so you can refer to them when you need them, but they're not in the way of the pattern, and it just explains the shaping and the stripes and how they're worked. We have a page with a chart and the different sizes. Different yarns block very differently, and then the gradient shawl uses just one 100-gram skein, and there's that information. Here's the pattern, one for the gradient yarn and a second one for the stripes. On the striping, I've left you a spot to write your colors down and then to check off your progress as you progress. Today we're going to start the shawl together. It has a few new techniques, so this is a great opportunity to share them with you and explain why we've started the cast on the way we have. We're knitting today with a worsted merino yarn. We're going to start with a long tail cast on. You don't need to add a slip knot if you're not familiar with this. Just put your needle in the middle and wrap around. The resilient cast on is always worked in sets of 3, and that's because you're going to eliminate one of those 3 stitches after you work the slip stitch over. So here's my 3, 6, 9. The resilient cast on, and we have another video on it, requires circular needles. You're going to slide all the stitches to the other side, and you're going to slip 2 purlwise, pass the stitch over, creates a little knot, give it a little tug, slip 1, does nothing, slip 2, pass the slip stitch over, slip 1. When you finish passing slip stitches over, you will have 6 stitches, and you can turn and see on this side you have the pretty nubby edges. The first stitch on the right side is always a knit 2 together front and back. This is the same as a knit 1 together front and back. You're just using 2 stitches. So here's knit 2 together, bring it around to the back, and knit 2 through the back loop. You can see it has a pretty nubby edge. The next stitch on this first row only is a make 1 loop. You just turn and put on a backwards loop. That's an increase you'll be using from now on the left side only. You're going to knit 2 and purl 2. And the reason we're purling 2 at the end is I want all of the nubby edges on the right side. If you're a thrower, let's just quickly look at how to do a make 1 loop. There's your knit 2 together, twist the yarn in your right hand, bring the yarn to the front so you can work the next purl. The bias shaping for this pattern is done on the wrong side. The bias shaping is when you decrease 1 stitch on one edge and you increase on the other. For this pattern, there's a knit 2 together on this edge. And if you're wondering about the wrapped knit 2 together, if you're working on the stripe pattern, we'll get to that in a minute. I kind of want to just do it step by step. We're going to knit 3, yarn over, and knit 2. And these last few stitches will be the same for every wrong side row that you work. Now we're ready to start adding stitches so that we can grow this shawl by adding 1 stitch every right side row. So we know that we're going to start with a knit 2 together, front and back, and from now on we're going to work the next stitch, which is the yarn over, by working an increase which is knit 1 front and back. So it's easy to remember when to work the knit 2 front and back because they're worked together. Knit 2 front and back, knit 1 front and back. So now we can knit 2 and purl 2. And we've now increased a stitch. On row 4 of your setup, you're going to start the setup for the showy decrease lines. All right, and that's with that slip 1 with yarn in front, which is on the wrong side, and purl 1 because the partner stitch for showy decrease is always a purl even when you're knitting garter. So on the wrong side rows, I'm doing my bias shaping, so I knit 2 together. I do not knit 1, 2 together front and back, right? Now I'm going to knit 1, slip 1, purl 1, and then my knit 1, yarn over, knit 2. So the knit 2 together and the yarn over is not an increase, it's the bias shaping. And I've now established my 4 stitches to work my showy decrease. We've now finished our 4 setup rows and are going to start our 2-row repeat. You're going to continue to use this 2-row repeat. The only time it's going to change is you will be adding showy lines to the project as it gets wider. But let's start working on these 2 rows so I can show you how it's done. We always start on a right side row with a knit 2 into the front and knit 2 into the back. And I always apologize, I'm knitting around a camera, it's a little awkward. And now we're going to knit 1 into the front and knit into the back. This is a right side row, so it's an increase row I'm adding. Can you start to see those nubby lines? Right? I'm going to knit into the last 4 stitches, which in this case is just knit 1. And now here's my showy decrease. The slip stitch is always on the left of the 2 stitches. Knit 2 together. In this particular line only, right next to the edge, we're not going to use a yarn over. We're going to use a make 1 loop and then purl 2. So those last 4 stitches are always the same. And you can see there's that raised decrease. Now we're on a wrong side, so let's review those first few stitches again. They're always going to be knit 2 together, knit 1, that's into that make 1 loop, slip 1, and I can see that long stitch there? That's going to be my joined lines for the showy decrease. Purl 1, knit to the last 2 stitches, yarn over, that's the bias shaping, and knit 2. Now let's turn and work that right side row again. See the lines there? Knit 2 front and back, knit 1 front and back, knit to the last 4 stitches. So since I have 1 more stitch, this time I knit 2. And this is where I want you to start seeing the pattern, right? I can tell that it's correct because I have this raised line. The slip stitch is on the left, so I knit 2 together, make 1 loop, and purl 2. I'll be back as soon as I knit a few more rows. Before I get too much farther along in the shawl, let's talk about wrapping our knit 2 together and knit 2 together front and back. You can see here we have this nice edge going. There's the raised showy line, and here's the decrease edge. Let's make this edge a little bit more interesting by wrapping these 2 stitches. All that means is I'm going to slip 2 purlwise, move the yarn to the front, move the stitches back, bring the yarn around the tip, and now I'm going to do the same thing, knit 2, sorry about that, got it on the wrong side, front and back, knit 1, front and back. You can see now I have more stitches, but I'm still knitting to the last 4 stitches. I know things are going well because there's my raised line. I knit 2 together, make 1 loop, and purl 2. Now we're also going to wrap the first stitch on this side. So once again, I'm just going to slip 2 stitches to the left needle, move the yarn to the front, slip the 2 stitches back, bring the yarn around the front. On this wrong side, I am simply knitting 2 together. And now I continue in my pattern, knit 1, slip 1 with yarn in front, which is the wrong side, purl 1, that's the partner stitch, knit to the last 2 stitches, yarn over and knit 2. Let me do a few more rows and I'll show you what it looks like. And now here we are after several more rows. Look at the edge. See the difference? It's got a really pretty nubby edge on that side and on the other side. This is also a great opportunity and the perfect time to show you how to add a showy decrease line, which will be added along the right edge. After the right side row, when I count the number of stitches here, I have 19 stitches. So let's turn and work the wrong side row together. We're going to start the wrong side row as usual. Slip, move the yarn to the front, move it around the front of the tip and knit 2 together. Knit 1. Sorry, that was me undoing a row before. Slip 1 and purl 1. So I had 5 edge stitches, now I have 4. And when I count to this side, I'm going to have 14 new stitches. This is the 14 stitches you'll have whenever you're going to add a showy line. This is when you're going to know to add one. You're going to have the 5 stitches turned into 4, and then after that purl stitch, you're going to count 14 stitches. And if you can do that on counting on the wrong side row, it's time to add a showy line. So now we knit 8 stitches. I had to undo because I was talking last time and messed up, so I will count. There's my 4 edge stitches, 2, 4, 6, 7, so 1 more. Now it's time to add the showy line. I'll have 6 stitches left here. We're going to slip 1 with yarn in front and purl 1. That's going to start the showy line on the other side. And now, as always, I am going to knit 2, yarn over, and knit 2 more. The next line is where you're going to start the showy line. See that stitch there? So let's do that together. Slip 2, yarn to the front, move it back. See that nub? Knit 2 into the front, knit 2 into the back, knit 1 into the front and into the back. Now, I see that that's not a garter stitch, so I'm going to knit 1, and now I knit 2, and then see that raised line there? That's on the left side, so I know that I'm going to knit 2 together. And now in all future showy lines, you're going to yarn over as the partner increase, and now knit to the last 4 stitches as normal. Here's those last 4 stitches. I can see the showy line. Knit 2 together, And on this left one next to the edge only, you're going to do the make one and purl two. So now we have added a new showy line. Here's the section in between. I'd like to review a tip and a fix for you. Once you have the showy lines going, you have this wonderful yarn over eyelet here, which is going to indicate to you when it's time to slip. So here's my knit stitch. There's the yarn over. The next 3 stitches are purl, slip, purl. I can verify that I'm slipping in the right place by peeking to the right side. Now let's look at a mistake that I made on purpose here, but I did not do it on purpose when I was actually knitting the shawls, and I want to give you a quick fix. As always, at the end of this wrong side, we knit to the last 2 stitches. But I can see here there's something wrong. I need to knit this stitch and then yarn over, and I have only 1 stitch left. That's because on the prior right side row, instead of knitting 2 into the front and back, by mistake, I just knit 2 together. So I need to add this another stitch back here. Rather than unknitting the 2 rows, the easiest fix is to do your yarn over and knit 1 into the front and knit 1 into the back. When you turn and you work your wrapped stitches here, it will, the mistake will pretty much disappear and you won't have to unknit. So now I'm going to remember from now on, knit 2 front and back, knit 1 front and back, and I'll have this pretty nubby edge and I won't have to worry about it. There's the showy line. One more thing before we finish our Cassini shawl how-to video is I want you to notice how I don't have to count anymore. I don't need to worry about how many stitches are from here to here because I can easily see this showy line and the yarn over, which is going to help me identify it. So now I don't count, I just knit until I get to this point, knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 1. And the last thing I want to show you is the shawl is shaped by not only adding a stitch on the right side, but as you go through the shawl, there's a stitch added, stitches added in each of these sections. So let's work this first increase here together. The way you know that it's time to add a stitch is you're going to count these showy lines, showy sets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. That's the easiest way to do it. When you have 20 or 30 of these sets on this leftmost edge, you're going to knit to the stitch before the showy line. So here I have these 2 stitches, which I know I have to knit 2 together. Into this stitch, I'm just going to knit 1 front and back, and then knit 2 together, yarn over, and finish my row. The nice thing is on the next knit 2 together, it's going to eat this stitch, so the increase ends up really not showing at all. So there's my knit 2 together, make 1, purl 2. These stitches are added in each section every 20 or 30 sets, depending on which you're using gradient or the stripes. So you can tell then if I'm going to add 1 here, I certainly don't have 20 sets here. If I wait and I add 1 here, the increases are staggered over the shawl. Since this is going to be much longer, there'll be more increases on this left side than there will be on the shorter right side. And the last thing, again, is don't worry if it's exactly 20 sets or 30 sets. As I mentioned in the overview mirror, space them out. Mine were 15 sets, 25 sets, just so by the end you've gotten that graceful curve by adding the stitches throughout the pattern. And there you have it, the Cassini shawl. I really enjoyed knitting this pattern. I knit 3 in a row and I'm very tempted to knit another one. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with it. And if you have any questions or comments, just go to the blog post and post a comment at the bottom. I see them as soon as they come in. and I'll get back to you, and other people might have the same question. Have a great day.